This is Citizen Weekend with Olive Barrows.
Forcibly stripped and raped is just some of what Agatha Atuhaire says she underwent at the hands of Tanzanian authorities after heading to Dar es Salaam in support of Tundu Lissu, who is facing charges of treason and who was due to make a court appearance. Tonight, we ask her what gives her the courage to speak out. We'll also be joined by Hussein Khaled, CEO Vocal Africa, who will tell us what his experience was being deported from Tanzania when he traveled there again in support of Tundu Lissu. We'll also be joined by Dr. Nicodemus Mende, who is a researcher, Institute for Security Studies, Nairobi, and he will be speaking on what it all means for the region. We begin Citizen Weekend, as we always do, with the news highlights.
Watu kutoka kwengine wanataka kuja kuvuruga huku ndani. Sasa hii kazi ya kulinda hilo sio yangu peke yangu, wala sio vyombo vya ulinzi na usalama peke yao, ni sote.
U.S. Bureau of African Affairs raises concern over detention of activists in Tanzania as President Suluhu maintains tough stance against what she terms external interference.
Mambo yameathirika hapa karibu zaidi ya room 40.
Walikuwa kwa nyumba wote, mama na ndugu yake na watoto wawili.
A family of 4 among 8 killed in a night fire in Kibira as a father in Bomet loses 2 children to another inferno.
Idara ya polisi imeongeza ile operation ya kuondoa wahalifu kutoka sehemu hiyo. Na kwa sababu ya hiyo operation tumeweza kushika watu karibu 4.
Slain priest was a victim of retaliatory attack, Murkomen says, as he orders a manhunt for bandits in Kerio Valley. Tear gas and running battles. Chaos as DCP Deputy Party Leader Malala clashes with police in Kakamega rally. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Wilson Ochuka. We begin on a tragic note. Grief and heartbreak has gripped Kibira and Bomet counties following deadly fire incidents that claimed the lives of innocent children and left families shattered. In Kibira, in Nairobi County, 8 people, including a mother, her 2 children and a brother, perished in an early morning inferno that razed homes and displaced dozens. In Bomet, a father is in deep mourning after losing his 2 young children in a house fire. Willie Lusige has that report.
Makina area of Kibra has suffered irreparable loss. On quiet Saturday morning, tragedy struck, a raging fire reducing homes to ashes, possessions to rubble, and lives to memories. At least 8 people perished, among them a pregnant woman and 4 family members.
It's unfortunate. It has costed the life of 8 innocent Kenyans. The investigations we have been conducting in regards to the previous fires, basically they have been illegal connections. We normally discourage illegal connections.
Family moja walikuwa kwa nyumba wote, mama na ndugu yake na watoto wawili waliungua ndani ya nyumba.
In the narrow alleyways behind Kambi, neighbors watched helplessly as gas cylinders exploded, fueling the inferno that consumed everything in its path.
Nyumba ambayo imeathirika hapa karibu zaidi ya room 40. Hata alikuwa anaanza kushika upande wa kwangu kama pande.
The cause of the fire remains unknown. It struck while families were asleep, and within minutes, darkness turned to despair. The residents of Kibra say they don't want the frequent condolences from politicians. What now they want is a lasting solution to the frequent cases of fire outbreak here in Kibra.
Ujumbe kwa serikali, hii habari ya moto isiwange tu ni kitu kama ya abnuasi. Tu kuja kutoa rambe na solution haipatikani. Utakuja kushuka saizi, utakuja kweli mwenye kuleta sijui mabati, lakini hawamalizangi ya shida.
Hatuna ile manufaa ya kwenda kulipa manyumba zile wanasema affordable houses. Sisi tunaishi kwa hizi nyumba zile za kawaida. Lakini naomba tu serikali tafadhali, kama ambulance, kama nini hiyo zimamoto ikuwe tu hapa hata kwa kiwanja.
In Bomet County, another family shattered. In Daraweta village, a family grief weighs heavy after a fire consumed their home, killing their 2 young children, aged 1 and 7, in the dead of the night.
I have lost the 2. They are kids. With everything that was inside the house. I was at job, yet I'm walking not far away, but I have to come maybe in the evening or sometimes in the morning.
It is believed the children, left briefly alone, may have accidentally triggered a gas explosion. Willie Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The U.S. government now wants a thorough and immediate investigation into the arrest and torture of activists from Kenya and Uganda. Kenya's Boniface Mwangi and Uganda's Agatha Atuhaire, who is already on call with us tonight, were held and allegedly tortured by Tanzanian authorities over their support for the opposition leader Tundu Lissu. The U.S. government's demand comes as President Samia Suluhu maintained that she will continue to guard Tanzania against what she termed as outside interference. Brenda Wanga has more.
The United States government has criticized the authorities in Tanzania days after Kenyan and Ugandan activists held and allegedly tortured in Tanzania were released. The US's Bureau of African Affairs, in a terse statement on X, expressed its deep concern over the mistreatment in Tanzania of the 2 East African activists. It further called for immediate and full investigations into the allegations of human rights abuses, while urging countries in the region to hold to account those responsible for violating rights and torturing people. Tanzania's President Samia Suluhu, addressing the matter yet again, had turned defiant despite condemnation locally and internationally.
Na kwa sababu ya uzuri na madhubuti wa taifa letu, mnaona yanayotokea leo. Kwamba nchi watu kutoka kwengine wanataka kuja kuvuruga huku ndani. Sasa hii kazi ya kulinda hilo sio yangu peke yangu, wala sio vyombo vya ulinzi na usalama peke yao, ni sote. Ni sote, kwa sababu wakikosa huku watapita huko kupita mawizara, mashirika yetu, nani watataka kuingia huko kuvuruga. Naomba mkalinde taifa lenu.
Suluhu's government has been criticized over its handling of activists seeking to show their solidarity with opposition leader Tundu Lissu as he stood trial for treason. Kenya's Martha Karua and former Chief Justice Willy Mutunga were denied entry into Tanzania, while Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atuhaire were detained and tortured.
Throw me down. They handcuff me. You will see some of the...
The statement comes as former Chief Justice David Maraga, who was allowed entry into Tanzania, defended the presence of activists in court while Tundu Lissu's trial was underway.
Sio ati ni kufuruga amani yao. Hatuna haja ya na hiyo. Tulienda tu kujiunga pamoja na kufanya ile solidarity kwa mpinzani wa kiongozi wa upinzani katika nchi ya Tanzania ambao anapigania haki ya nchi sao kama nchi sote.
Maraga says the activists' support for Tundu Lissu was motivated by the quest for sustaining democracy in the East African region.
Kama hakuna demokrasia Uganda, Tanzania na zile jirani zetu wote, we all get affected. Hizi countries zinakuwa affected. Kwa hivyo kwenda kwetu hapo ni kuchumuika na wale wenzetu ambao wanataka haki itendeke, uchaguzi ufanywe wa haki, ambao kila mmoja ambaye anataka uongozi apewe nafasi ya kupigania wananchi waamue.
The torture of the activists is a matter that has now been escalated to the African Union, with Martha Karua petitioning it on the same. Amnesty International has also condemned the handling of the activists and has called for accountability. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen now says slain priest Alois Cheruiyot Bet was a victim of a retaliatory attack by bandits displaced from their hideouts during the ongoing Operation Maliza Uhalifu. Murkomen, who condoled with the family of the late priest in Nandi County, reiterated the government's commitment to bring all perpetrators to justice. Catholic priests, speaking during a church event in Elgeyo Marakwet dedicated to the late Cheruiyot, a known peace champion in Kerio Valley, have called for urgent action to end the cycle of violence that continues to claim innocent lives. Gatete Njoroge with more on the conflicting reports from the Interior Minister as well as the police.
In the company of Nandi County leaders, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen arrived in Cheplasigei village to condole with the family of slain Reverend Father Alois Cheruiyot Bet. Murkomen came bearing a message of hope to a family still reeling from the shock of a heinous attack, one that claimed the life of a man who chose the unlikely path of championing peace in a region long plagued by violence. Tragically, the very men he sought to transform from bandits into peace ambassadors are believed to be the ones who ended his life. The Cabinet Secretary vowed to leave no stone unturned in the pursuit of justice for the slain priest.
Ninawahakikishia kwamba kwenda mbele, kwanza tutashika wale wote walihusika katika ujangili huu. Ya pili ni kuhakikisha kwamba tutajitahidi hata zaidi kuhakikisha tumepunguza mambo ya wizi ya ng'ombe na uwaji ya watu.
Murkomen says the late priest was a victim of ruthless retaliatory attacks by bandits who have been overwhelmed by Operation Maliza Uhalifu, ongoing in the North Rift region. The CS says over the last 3 weeks, security officers have killed 2 bandits and arrested 4 others.
Mmoja wao ndiye alikuwa komanda yao katika sehemu hiyo. Na kwa sababu ya hasira ya wale wengine alishirikiana nao, wakatoa hiyo hasira ya hiyo operation, wakaenda sasa wanatafuta kila mtu ambaye aswa kama Father Alois amepigwa tu bure kwa sababu amekuwa ni mhubiri wa kuleta amani.
Wanajaribu kutafuta yule ambaye itaumiza community ili ati serikali isiendelee kufanya hiyo operation. Na sisi tunataka kukuambia kutoka hapa nyumbani Nandi, can you continue focusing and eliminate Kerio Valley of all those criminals?
Tafadhali mtueleze kwa kinaga ubaga nini ilitendeka, ni nini serikali imefanya kuweka kipao mbele katika hiyo investigations ili hao wazazi na wanavijiji wapate justice.
The Interior Boss has dismissed those calling for his sacking following the murder of 3 people by bandits in the last 2 weeks, saying Kerio Valley region has enjoyed relative peace for the last 1 year. Murkomen cited data showing a significant drop in livestock theft. Unlike in 2024, when over 11,000 animals were stolen between January and June, this year, the number has reduced by half, with 5,419 livestock reported stolen over the same period. Catholic priests who attended a family day service in Chebororwa, Elgeyo Marakwet, have joined the growing chorus of voices calling for justice and a lasting end to the banditry menace.
Nilisikia kuna kiongozi mmoja alikuwa amesema hata hatuna maneno ya kusema. Sema kweli hakuna haja ya maneno sasa. Can we see action? Tuone matendo kwa sababu tumeongea sana.
Ukileta tu mwalifu ama utuambie mahali yako ashikwe vizuri, mimi nakupatia 100,000 pa mwalifu. Kwa sababu kuliko nichanga mazishi kutoka Januari mpaka Januari.
Gatete Njoroge, Citizen TV.
Business in Kakamega Town was disrupted for the better part of Saturday morning as police engaged supporters of the DCP party in running battles. A Meet the People tour led by the deputy party leader Cleophas Malala hit a snag, with police dispersing crowds anytime they converged within the town. As you'll hear now from Laura Otieno, Malala has condemned the incident, accusing security agencies of undermining democracy.
Kakamega Town was on Saturday morning engulfed in clouds of tear gas. sirens rent the air, traders as well as residents took cover, with leaders tucking themselves inside cars, fleeing from the rising clouds of smoke. The chaos began after police dispersed a crowd that had accompanied former Kakamega Senator and Deputy Leader of the newly unveiled Democracy for the Citizens Party, DCP, Cleophas Malala, who was on a popularization tour of the party. Malala accusing state agencies of abuse of power.
Polisi wanatumika kulipiga na kupiga watu ambao hawapendi serikali ama wanaenda against serikali. Tungependa kusema we shall not fear. We shall continue fighting for our people and we shall liberate this country.
The supporters later regrouped, chanting anti-government slogans. Malala, on his part, vowing to liberate the region from what he said were the shackles of retrogressive politics.
Tumeingia kwa vyama ambazo zinauza watu wetu. Leo hii mimi mwenyewe nimeamua niingie kwa chama ambacho mimi mwenyewe nimeunda na Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua. Tunataka tuingie, tuhakikishe kwamba tumekomboa wale ambao wamekuwa kidhulumiwa miaka mingi.
Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
Lawyers representing the Juja Member of Parliament, George Koimburi, along with residents of Juja, are demanding that the government produce the legislator who went missing on Friday. Koimburi is said to have been accosted by individuals believed to be security agents shortly after issuing bursaries at the Gashororo Primary School grounds. The Member of Parliament reportedly fled on a motorbike after a dramatic car chase involving his official vehicle. His driver was allegedly intercepted, taken to the DCI headquarters and later released on Friday night. The Member of Parliament's legal team has condemned the incident as unlawful and politically motivated, accusing the police of violating court orders. They say Koimburi had secured an injunction against his arrest following charges of forgery filed at the Kiambu Law Courts back in February. Meanwhile, residents who had gathered at Juja Farm expecting Koimburi to lead a bursary issuance event have voiced frustration, accusing the county government of using state machinery to silence opposition voices.
Justice Mushila alielekeza na akasema kuwa George Koimburi asiguzwe na mtu yeyote mpaka kesi iweze kutajwa tarehe ambayo ni mwezi ujao. Na leo kuwa mheshimiwa angeza kuja hapa sababu kuanzia jana kuna watu ambao wako wamevaa uniform au wamejitambulisha kama wanasheria ama polisi walimkimbiza na hatujui pale the Honorable Member of Parliament of Juja constituency yupo.
Hatujui ama alienda na polisi ama alienda aje, lakini sasa tunataka tu clarifyiwe ameenda aje. Juu hatumuoni kwa ground, hatumuoni size, hatumuoni na tumezoea kuongeleshwa na yeye tukipewa bursaries.
Kenya Revenue Authority Commissioner General Humphrey Watanga was put on the spot to explain why the agency is backing a controversial clause in the Finance Bill of 2025. The provision would grant the KRA automatic access to trade secrets and personal data of Kenyan citizens. In addition, the authority has been accused of breaching data privacy through its iTax business registration platform. With just a taxpayer's PIN, the portal reportedly reveals sensitive personal information, including contacts, email addresses, residential location, and place of employment. Seth Olale attended the public hearings on the finance bill held in Nairobi.
Able to provide with at least 10 entities, including the Law Society of Kenya, opposing a controversial provision in the Finance Bill 2025 that would grant KRA automatic access to trade secrets and personal data of Kenyans. Commissioner General Humphrey Watanga was pressed to explain why the agency is supporting the move.
Consequence of deleting 1B, section 59, 1B of the Tax Procedures Act would therefore mean that the commissioner may may have access to trade secrets and private and personal data held on behalf of customers or collected in course of doing business.
We strictly adhere to data protection guidelines. Data governance is a core aspect of our pursuit.
The taxman is also under fire for allegedly breaching taxpayers' personal data through the iTax business registration platform. With just a taxpayer's PIN, the portal can easily retrieve sensitive details, including contact information, email address, residential location, and place of employment.
Randomly, we're able to access all this personal information already in your system. So if you grant the powers that you seek here, how would you guarantee Kenyans that their data will be protected if already all that data will be available online? And remember, with e-teams now, every time if I want to claim for my Uber receipts, then I give them my PIN number. So my Uber driver could easily have my PIN number and be able to pull all that personal information about taxpayers.
The objective is not to open and avail data from our side to any other party, but for us to be able to acquire the data that is necessary for purposes of tax adjudication or tax assessment. So it's data that will be incoming and not for us to be sharing data.
In addition, the Kenya Revenue Authority has dismissed claims of an exodus of foreign corporates to neighboring countries due to high tax obligations. The tax agency, which has set a revenue target of 2.9 trillion shillings for the 2025-2026 financial year, maintains that various incentives have been introduced to cushion businesses operating in the country. Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
Incumbent Zubeida Kananu has retained her seat as the president of the Kenya Editors Guild. Kananu, who was running against Citizen TV's Yvonne Okwara, will be deputized by Francis Openda, who was elected unopposed. 5 other journalists were elected to serve with the leadership as part of the Executive Council for the 2-year term. The Kenya Editors Guild brings together senior print, broadcast, digital and other electronic media editors. The winners pledged to work to strengthen media independence and freedom in the country.
To the incoming leadership, I extend my sincere congratulations. You have a big task ahead of you, which is to unite a divided guild, to restore trust and confidence in our shared institution, and I wish you all the best.
Letu ni kushikana tu mkono, kushirikiana na kujenga tasnia yetu, kwa sababu tuko katika kipindi kigumu sana. Katika miaka iliyopita tumeshuhudia madhila tu yakitekelezwa dhidi ya wanahabari humo nchini. Tumeona wanahabari wetu wakidhulumiwa.
All right, before we get Agatha Atuhaire on the line, I'm joined in studio by Hussein Khaled, who is the CEO of Vocal Africa, and we also have Dr. Nicodemus Minde, who is a researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Nairobi. Gentlemen, thank you for being here, and we'll be joined shortly by Agatha. But I'll start with you, Hussein. What a week. Indeed. And it started right on Sunday.
Indeed, what a week. Started on Sunday with Martha Karua and other members of the LSK being detained for a couple of hours before they were deported. And then Sunday night we traveled, myself, the former CJ Willie Mutunga and Hanifa. Again, we were stopped at the airport, passports taken to the interrogation room, detained there for hours before we were sent back. And while we were there, we kept being told that Boniface will be joining us so that we can go back to Kenya together. But by the time we left, he was nowhere to be seen. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, 4 days later, he's brought back, or he comes back, badly, severely tortured, wounded, in and out of theater as we speak. But we pray that he's well. And then the day after, of course, our sister Agatha is also dropped at the border. Same. Severely wounded after the torture experience in Tanzania. But we pray that justice be done.
All right. Dr. Minde, I'll ask you to come in at this point. Just, is this something you expected could happen in this day and age?
Well, I think if you look at the trends in Tanzania's democracy, I think what is happening is just but an extension of what has been happening over the past 6-7 years. Of course, there was a bit of a break where we saw some form of reforms, and of course, you know, these reforms were quickly backtracked. Of course, this being an election year, we expected to see more of this, but to this length, I think it was not widely expected that this extent could have gone this far. But again, being an election year, a lot will be happening, and of course, with the case that is ongoing, the treason case against Tundu Lissu, I think it is just but an example of the level of democratic decline in the country.
All right, so we'll take a break, but we'll pick this conversation up on the other side, where we'll be joined by Agatha as well from Kampala, Uganda. So do stay tuned to Citizen Weekend. All right, welcome back to Citizen Weekend. We have in studio Hussein Khaled, CEO of Vocal Africa, and we also have Dr. Nicodemus Minde, who is a researcher, ISS Nairobi. And before the break, I had asked if this is something you expected. You know, Hussein, this is directed at you. Two former Chief Justices, one was allowed into court with Tundu Lissu, the other was denied entry, a former Justice Minister for Kenya, you know, so, you know, a lot of people made the point that under the EAC Protocol Treaty, you know, citizens of East Africa should be able to move freely across borders.
It's true. If you look at the top of our passports, the topmost part is written East African Community. So the idea is that there is free movement of persons and goods across the borders, and it should be open to anyone and everyone. But even if we're not in the cooperation, people travel all over the world to follow up on court cases. And a good example is Kenya's parliamentarians. When someone has a case at the ICC, you know how they travel in hordes across overseas, you know, to go and just witness and give support and stand in solidarity. So how is it that we can do that, you know, all the way in Europe, in The Hague, but we can't do that in East Africa, where we have a cooperation agreement? So the idea was to go there. We were not meddling in any way. We were simply going there to observe. After we were invited by Tanzanian civil society, the Tanganyika Law Society, and others, so that we can just help in terms of ensuring that the court process moves on as expected, and to just apply pressure so that you know, there is no interference in what you know, Tundu Lissu is facing. Okay. So that's why we were there. Okay. Yeah, but you know what? You know, you're speaking as a Kenyan activist. Maybe the experience for Tanzanian nationals is entirely different. Is it usually like that? Is that how Tanzania handles those it views, as Madam Samia Suluhu has said, meddlers?
Well, of course, Tanzania is part and parcel of the international community, and of course, it has signed many international treaties. And of course, there is what we call international norms, which many countries that are civilized, countries that respect human rights, democracy, or call themselves democracies, have to abide by. And as my colleague has mentioned, that East Africa, Tanzania is a key member of the East African community, in as much as we talk about sovereignty and talk about territorial integrity and all that. I think sometimes certain governments who perceive some form of threat, or perceive, or who are in one or the other maybe not doing the right thing, will always jump to accuse the external. And of course, we have seen this with the example that has been given. And of course, it comes as a surprise. Tanzania has been always historically a beacon of human rights and supporting you know, the struggle for independence of many other countries in the Southern African countries. Tanzania has always been a key player in terms of championing these rights. So it comes also as a surprise that now the country is actually sliding into dictatorial and, of course, authoritarian tendency, which we have seen in the past week or so.
All right. So What do you make of her response? Has her, her response that you foreigners are going to meddle in Tanzanian affairs?
I think very clearly those are signs of a leader who feels threatened. She feels that, perhaps these individuals will come in and raise some awareness so that people will then turn against me and stuff like that. So the whole essence behind the comments is to divide and rule, to make Tanzanians feel that, they are under attack so that they can galvanize behind her, give her the support she needs. This is from politicians' playbook. Every time you feel your time is almost up, then you hide either behind your borders, as she is doing, or you can hide behind a community or a select group of people. And the idea is to have the us versus them, here versus there, and which is something that, is used many times by politicians. And what we need to understand is that human rights are universal. You cannot, by any means, and Dr. has said this, hold foreign nationals, torture them to that extent, and, then pretend that these guys are meddling and so they deserve what they got. Absolutely unacceptable. And they have to be told, the Tanzanian regime, together with their officers, that this is something that goes beyond even the East African cooperation. These are matters to do with international human rights standards that have been violated. And these cases must also be taken up, whether it's Interpol or anyone else for that matter, to get those officers who are responsible and any other person who gave the directions for the torture to be committed. And I think that's the only way we will be able to safeguard the rights and freedoms of Kenyans, of East Africans, and Africans in general.
I'm curious, Dr. Minde, what do you make of the region's response? Because there are those who believe that Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda are of the same mind.
Oh, yes.
When it comes to this.
Well, I think it comes also to no surprise that certain sections and how it has been responded at very high level, which again begs the question, was there some form of coordinated approach towards this? See, this is a question that has to be interrogated. Of course, Kenya's foreign minister at one point made reference to this collaboration in reference to the Besigye case. So again, we as researchers and of course policy analysts, we tend to also ask crucial questions whether or not there are coordinated responses by the government. And of course, be it as it may, when you look at the protection of citizens, foreign citizens in foreign countries, it is the duty of most ministries of foreign affairs to actually really protect the rights of these foreign individuals, and of course, at all costs. And then when they are taken back to their country, then they can be able to face maybe cases brought against them. But if you look at the layers of diplomacy and the conduct of state relations, diplomacy actually calls for the protection of the individuals, of foreign individuals in foreign countries. And for me, this is something that really has to be really interrogated fully.
All right. You have something to add to that?
Yeah, I think I agree that there was some level of, I believe they spoke, these three countries. You asked a very important question. How is it that one former Chief Justice goes in and the other one doesn't? Even when you look at those of us who were denied, there are some who are working still in civil society who are allowed to go in. Even those people who traveled with Boniface Mwangi that morning and they were allowed in, some of them were still there and absolutely nothing was done. So we believe that there was some form of communication. And if you listen also to what Boniface has claimed this morning in his X, it's like he was being accused of information only Kenyans would know of. Calling him Mungiki, telling him he's a thug and stuff like that. All these are claims that, came from the Tanzanian security officers. So we believe that at some point, these governments had some level of communication and they shared whatever information they shared, such that, you say Daktari can go in, Khalid cannot go in. Olive can go in, so-and-so cannot go in. So we believe that there was that. And this is what we are saying. These governments are united to oppress their people. That's why Mudavadi, when he went on TV the other day, right here on Citizen, he seemed to be defending what the Tanzanian government had done. Absolutely unacceptable. You are a foreign affairs minister and you are on national television defending another country that has detained your national. And you know, you are there saying, well, you know, our constitution does not apply in Tanzania. So which constitution or which international law allows any country, for that matter, to detain a foreign national? Okay. We're not talking about our constitution. We are talking about international human rights standards. All right. And speaking of international human rights standards, Dr. Minde, what do you make of the U.S. response?
Well, I think it is an appropriate response. Of course, the United States statement is of great gravitas in terms of putting pressure on the Tanzanian government. And of course, it was expected that they actually needed to rebuke the issues that have been ongoing in the country. And of course, this is actually what is needed going forward. For example, now that there is this treason charge against the opposition leader, and mind you, there is also the opposition has been disbarred from the elections up until now. So it looks like the elections will just be, you know, will go unchallenged. And for me, I think international community needs to really put a lot of pressure on the Tanzanian government and of course many East African governments, so that we can be able to see concerted efforts towards a return to some form of democratic ideals, openness, and of course respect for human rights across the region actually. All right. Khaled, so, okay, of course, I'll ask you to respond to what the U.S., your response to the U.S. Statement. But also, what does that then mean for activism? Kizza Besigye. Not even just activism, but the state of democracy in the region. Kizza Besigye detained as well on treason charges. And initially, he was brought before a military court. There's still a push to have that happen. You have Tundu Lissu demanding for electoral reform ahead of the polls. Is it October or November? October, Dr. Minde. And then now you have this type of hostility, open hostility against activists. Yeah, so in terms of activism, this particular incident, one, it has broken the barrier of the borders. Now we are speaking as one people. The pain of Agatha is the pain of Kenyans. The pain of Boniface is the pain of Tanzanians. We are all saddened, you know, irrespective of which country you come from. But as East Africans, we all now understand that we owe each other, you know, that demand for solidarity to stand united. So one thing that this particular incident has done is that we no longer want to abide by those borders that were put, you know, in place by colonialists. You know, we are one large community, and that is how we want to see it. Number two, what we've also clarified from this particular incident is that these leaders are working together. These three governments are working together. And unfortunately, when it's about human rights, when it's about activism, when it's about constitutionalism and stuff like that, that is where they work together to violate the rights. That's how Kenya can attempt to kidnap or abduct Maria Sarungi Sehai with intentions to transfer them. That is why Kizza Besigye today is behind the docks because of actions of the Kenyan government, you know, and many other related issues. We have Tanzanians who are picked from Kenya, Kenyans who are picked from Uganda, and this is, you know, the modus operandi for them. So number two, we have confirmed that they are working together to silence critics. Number three, we've also seen now that we need to have politicians working together. We can no longer just work within our political divides. Seeing a presidential candidate in Kenya, yes, indeed, former Chief Justice, but a presidential candidate who has announced that he's vying for a political seat, crossing over the border to Tanzania to stand in solidarity with a Tanzanian opposition leader who is facing untold suffering, you know. Seeing Martha Karua, another presidential contender, crossing the border into Uganda. So even the political divide, we now must see each other as brothers and sisters. Let the leaders work together against us, but as a people,
If we agree that we will stand together and a violation in Tanzania is a violation in Uganda and in Kenya, then we will be able to move forward collectively.
Do you think the events of June the 25th in Kenya 2024 may have contributed to the current state of affairs?
Without a doubt. And of course, if you look at the events of the past year or so in many of these East African countries, you can see there's that threat of fear, especially by the ruling elite, that such scenarios could actually be replicated in their countries. In Uganda, for example, right now, the parliament just passed the UPDF Act, which now mandates citizens can be tried in military courts. And of course, any form of protest, any form of organization that will challenge is oftentimes met with brutal force, especially in Tanzania. Of course, last year there was plenty of brutal repression against the opposition, and of course the same is also met in Uganda and the like. So there is that apprehension amongst the ruling parties in East Africa that such a scenario where youth or activism will really threaten the status quo. That is why you can see concerted efforts towards repressing any civil and human rights and democracy in the region.
Some of those who've been asked to, speak out against these kinds of actions, the African Union, for example, that Martha Karua wrote to. Yeah. Do you expect action from within, or a condemnation, a denouncement from within the African continent?
We do expect action. As Vocal Africa, we also wrote to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. We also submitted an urgent appeal to the United Nations Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances. These are units within the United Nations and the African Commission that work to push states to address human rights violations when those violations are reported to them. So we believe by now, definitely the Tanzanian government must have received the formal complaint from these institutions. But of course, you know how the United Nations and these international bodies work. Their members are the states, so they can't really announce or just let everyone know what kind of communication has been sent to member states. But yes, we've done that, and we are presently also trying to invoke many other international instruments, because we've changed now from Free Boniface Mwangi and Free Agatha Twahire, because we have them, to Justice for Boniface and Justice for Agatha. These individual officers, including Mafuele and others, we know them now. And we have the pictures. We've asked Boniface.
Where did you get that information?
We've gotten that from partners. We have pictures, we have everything. We went to show Boniface and Agatha whether they identify those individuals, and they said yes. Like one of them, he said, this is the guy who actually called officers from Central Police Station to come for us. So we know them, and we have their photos. And the next course of action is that they must be arrested immediately. And if the government of Tanzania does not do it, then we have to invoke the international instruments, Interpol and others, so that if they ever try to step outside of Tanzania, then action, whichever country is around, they need to arrest them. So we want to send a very clear message, Olive, with this particular incident, that you cannot just, operate with such impunity of this kind. The message has to go out very clearly that this is unacceptable.
All right, Dr. Mende, your last word. Do we have reason to despair as East African citizens?
I don't think this is the time to despair. I think it is important that to speak about democracy. Democracy is what builds countries, and of course, my colleague has mentioned what is happening in Kenya and the like. But again, you also find in Tanzania, you also have similar people have also been abducted, missing, and of course, there's also demand for them to be their whereabouts actually, and of course, it is very important. But again, on the broader context of democracy and human rights in the continent, and of course in the East African region, we see see that there's been a deterioration of this democracy in terms of civil rights and liberties across this. But I think on your question on whether or not we should lose hope, I think it's not the right time to lose hope. I think it is very important to continue to speak up, and of course institutions that have been put in place to stand in terms of accountability, institutions such as the judiciary, institutions such as parliament, institutions such as the electoral commission, to what extent can they be empowered to really speak and bring people to account? And of course the role of the citizens in terms of pushing for this great accountability is very, very vital going forward.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We had Agatha on the line earlier. Unfortunately, she dropped off. We can imagine there are many demands on her time, but we will try to get a hold of her and get, understand from her what gives her the courage to speak out. These are not easy things to talk about, and also how it may have changed her outlook on things. So I want to thank Dr. Nicodemus Minde, who is a researcher, ISS Nairobi Institute for Security Studies, Nairobi, as well as you, Hussein Khaled. You're determined to keep up the fight?
Definitely.
All right. He is the CEO of Vocal Africa. We take a break, but Citizen Weekend continues on the other side. Leaders allied to President William Ruto and within the broad-based government have criticized former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua following the launch of his new political vehicle, the Democracy for Citizens Party. Led by President Ruto's aide, Farouk Kibet, the leaders have slammed Gachagua for championing tribal politics. Francis Mtalaki has more.
Allies of President William Ruto, captained by his personal assistant Farouk Kibet, Saturday continued their sustained attack on government critics, pouring cold water on the newly formed Democracy for Citizens Party, led by ousted former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. They said the party's formation was part of a plot to advance tribal politics in the country.
Hiyo chama ni hatari sana. Chama ambaye inatangaza fujo. Inasema tarehe 27 Disemba itakuwa kama holiday, watu watapigana. Tuambie shetani afanye nini? Sisi tunataka kuvaa kofia ya ODM, tuvae ya UDA, tuvae. Mambo ni hapo si hapo.
Yeye nimemsikia juzi ati anauliza Kindiki, hii pesa unapea vijana unatoa wapi? Nataka nimwambie, hii pesa Kindiki anapeana kwa vijana ni ile wewe ulikuwa unanunulia mahoteli wakati ulikuwa kwa ofisi.
Kwa maana mimi ninaunga mkono Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga wakati amesema washikane na Ruto wasongeshe Kenya mbele. Si ni sawa? Tumepata amani.
National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah criticized the former Deputy President remarks on economic empowerment spearheaded by Deputy President Kithure Kindiki, blaming Gachagua for not championing the bottom-up economic model.
For them to become real business owners, wewe kazi yako ni porojo. Ukiulizwa agenda yako ni chama. Ukiulizwa chama yako agenda yake ni nini? Ni William Ruto. William Ruto hakuna siku atakuwa agenda. Yet you had an opportunity when you served in high office in this country to empower the people of Kenya.
Tukingojea maneno matupu tutaipata lini? Kwa hivyo tunawaambia hao, sisi tunajua tunafanya nini. Tunajua tuko na ahadi na watu wetu, na ile ahadi tutaitimiza kwa njia yoyote ile.
A group of coast leaders led by mining and blue economy CS Ali Hassan Joho were in Baringo County leading the charge against former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and drumming support for the broad-based government, saying they will deliver come 2027.
How can I dream and imagine that one day I can be president? It is because someone is working in uniting the country.
Ati utawasikia sisi tumerauka na tutamtoa William. My friend, William amekesha. William amekesha. Ikiwa nyinyi mumerauka, William amekesha.
The progressive forces of ODM, you must take charge and lead ODM into government from when you joined, moving forward 27, 32 baada ya Rais Ruto. Wewe ujipange ndugu yangu.
Francis Mtalaki, Citizen TV.
Obstetric fistula continues to afflict thousands of Kenyan women, leaving them physically and emotionally scarred. Despite being preventable and treatable, many suffer in silence due to stigma and lack of access to care. This year's National Fistula Commemoration Day, held in Kisii County, spotlighted the urgent need for action. Citizen TV's Crispin Otieno brings us the story of resilience and hope.
In the serene village of Igoge, we find Damaris Marube, a mother of 5, tending to her daily chores alongside her husband. Behind her warm smile lies a story of pain and perseverance. Damaris endured 7 years of suffering after prolonged obstructed labor during the birth of her first child in 1998. The condition not only affected her health, but also strained her marriage.
Marafiki wakanitoroka, nikakaa peke yangu. Sasa nilikuwa na nini hiyo shida, nikikaa nikifikiria nikisema Mungu wangu, nani atatokea nisaidie na hii ugonjwa? Na mimi sikujua hii ugonjwa ni ugonjwa gani.
After undergoing corrective surgery, Damaris transformed her pain to purpose, becoming an ambassador to educate other women about obstetric fistula and the importance of seeking timely medical care.
Watu waendelea kuambiwa ukweli, kwa sababu kuna wengine mabibi zao wako na shida kama hiyo na hawajajua. Watu waendelea kufundishwa zaidi, wajue na wachukue mabibi zao watibiwe.
The National Fistula Commemoration Day brought together stakeholders, health experts and survivors to raise awareness and advocate for better healthcare services.
Intention again is to ensure that purposefully we continue to increase the capacity of healthcare providers to provide treatment and provide the necessary care.
Statistics reveal a grim reality. Out of the estimated 3,000 new fistula cases reported annually in Kenya, only about 1,000 women receive corrective surgery.
So today, as we come together as partners, on behalf of M-Pesa Foundation, I would like to thank all the collaborators, to thank the county, the Ministry of Health.
We will reach to you, uko mashinani, so that we can bring you forth. We bring you to the hospitals, you get treated, so that you can continue with your normal life.
The event's theme, Her Health, Her Right, underscores the collective responsibility to ensure women's access to quality maternal health care. As Damaris' story illustrates, with awareness, support, and timely intervention, women can reclaim their dignity and lead fulfilling lives. Crispin Otieno, Citizen TV, Kisii.
The Rotary Club of Milimani, in partnership with its Rotaract counterparts, has organized a free medical camp aimed at serving residents of South B and the Mukuru slums, bringing essential healthcare services right to their doorstep. The camp provided a wide range of services, including general checkups, treatment for common illnesses, cancer and heart screenings, dental and optical care, HIV testing and counseling, as well as mental health support at no cost. Organizers say the success of the initiative depends largely on donations, particularly from well-wishers who contribute essential medicines and medical supplies.
We invite people from the settlements of Mukuru kwa Njenga, Mukuru kwa Ruben for a free medical checkup. They do not pay anything. And they'll be seen by doctors who are volunteering and nurses, and also be given, for those that are not feeling well, they'll be able to get some treatment. I wish to thank citizens for always being able to participate in our events and giving us the coverage so that Kenyans and people of goodwill can get to know what Rotary is about.
Hapa wanapeana matibabu ya bure. Hata kama uko na pesa ya kwenda hospitali, hapo unasaidika bure. Pia imeletwa karibu na wananchi hapa kijiji. Kama ungekuwa umetuma Kenyatta ungetumia fare yako kwenda huko, lakini hapa sasa unakuja kwa mguu unamaliziwa hapa na unarudi.
The Archdiocese of Nairobi Youth Walk 2025 was today held in Nairobi, where it kicked off at the Holy Family Minor Basilica, and the theme of the walk was Youth as Agents of Peace and Change Embracing Mental Wellness. The walk was flagged off by Royal Media Services Editorial Director Linus Kaikai, who called for community support and resilience. The initiative started in 2023, showcasing the power of youth as agents of change.
You are the hope of society, and a just society is only possible with youth empowerment. I want us to, as we set off to this journey, believe in ourselves again. The youth have taken a very severe beating lately, negative criticism, and also internal deficiencies that we'll speak about along this journey, including things like falling to temptation to drugs and general things that weaken ourselves. I want to say, let us restore the hope of our youth. And it starts with each one of us believing in who you are.
Royal Media Services, in partnership, with St. Peter's Orthopedic Hospital, hosted a free medical camp at Jivanji Gardens in Nairobi. More than 1,000 residents benefited from free health checkups and treatment. The initiative aims to give back to the community while strengthening the station's connection with its audience. Radio Citizen's Tina Ogal emphasized the importance of such outreach in engaging loyal listeners. Special focus was given to Boda Boda riders who often suffer work-related injuries and respiratory issues.
Wengi wanakuja hapa, mtu alikuwa na ajali hajatibiwa, mtu alianguka na bodaboda, pikipiki wiki 3 zilizopita, mwezi mmoja, mwaka mmoja uliopita hajaangalia. So this is just an opportunity. Wajue kuwa sisi tunawajali.
Ni vyema wana bodaboda wanachangia katika kiwango kikubwa katika uchumi wa taifa, tuwahusishe katika shughuli nzima ya matibabu, wakati wa baridi, wakati wa vumbi na kadhalika.
And it's absolutely free. Na ukumbuke bado unapata mawaidha kutoka kwa specialist, tuko na gynecologist.
Tunahusika na accident mingi, tunahusika na maugonjwa mingi. Wale wako na kifua tuliwaambia wakuje wapimwe kifua ili azije akapata pneumonia imwanguse kabla hajajua.
Nimefurahi sana na madaktari kwa kazi yenye wamefanya, na watu wa Citizen nimewaona kina Monai.
We take a break, but the sports news is coming up on the other side. Kenya's visually impaired powerlifting team is set to depart the country tonight for the 5-day World Para-Powerlifting Championships, which kick off on Monday in Almaty, Kazakhstan. Our reporter Lukman Mahmood caught up with the team at their training base at National Stadium and filed this report.
Despite the challenges they face, the players here continue to do the final touches as they prepare to fly the Kenyan flag to the world event. After winning 12 medals last year in the same championship, they are now targeting more in the finals.
So far, since we were here, we've adjusted our training. Tumekuwa tukikuja daily na camp imetusaidia sana kukusanyika kwa pamoja. 12 medals. Now we are aiming above 20.
Aside from being a sport like other disciplines, the players here say powerlifting has had various benefits in their lives, especially due to the visual challenges they face.
Actually, kwa health-wise, mimi nasikia niko fiti. Magonjwa, asisikii magonjwa iko. Nasikia tu niko na moral kabisa. Kwa kujitegemea, pia ni game inalipa. Ukicheza vizuri ni game inalipa.
The technical bench is at the same time thankful to all who made preparation successful, promising good results when they take to the field next week.
Mikakati iko sawa, tumewekwa camp vizuri, kila kitu iko poa. Allowances wamepata vizuri, so ni si imebaki pande yetu. Pande ya serikali iko sawa, tuwezi laumu serikali chochote.
The team is flying to the city of Almaty in Kazakhstan, where the competition will be held. Disability is not inability. That's what the players here have proven ahead of the championship later next week. Lukman Mahmoud, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Rose Catherine emerged as the overall winner of the first leg of the qualifiers for the Golf World Cup that will tee off in Soma Bay, Egypt this October. Michael D'Souza came in with a close second with 45 points in the event that attracted over 200 golfers. This marks only the second time Africa will host the prestigious tournament after South Africa back in 1996. The qualification journey, branded the Road to Soma Bay, will feature 3 qualifying legs, with the top 2 overall finishes from each leg will secure a coveted spot in the national final set for September the 12th. The 2 players at the finals will earn an all-expenses-paid trip to represent Kenya at the Golf World Cup in Egypt from October the 12th to the 17th.
Out of those players who played today, the top 10 will be able to qualify for the finals. And by the top 10, I mean we have 2 categories. It's basically 5 players who are handicap 0 and 15 will be in their own division, and then 16 and above will be in their own division. So today we'll be taking 5 players from Division A, which is 0 to 15, and 5 players from Division B to go to the finals. We have 8 events taking place this year, and the next leg will be taking place at Nemuru next month, followed by Sigona.